The oceans of Earth had grown quiet. For centuries, humanity had turned its gaze to the stars, building great cities in space and exploring new worlds. Ships no longer sailed across Earth's waters as they once had. Ports lay empty, and the waves rolled over abandoned docks and forgotten harbors. Yet far beneath the surface, in the deepest and most hidden corners of the ocean, something stirred. Maris Kale, a young explorer from the Orbital Research Coalition, piloted her small submersible through the blue depths. Her mission was simple: map uncharted ocean regions and document any remaining signs of life. Humanity's new cities in the sky had brought new technology and ideas. But Earth, the cradle of human history, still held secrets worth exploring. Maris loved the ocean more than the stars. The water, to her, was alive with stories, memories, and whispers from the past. As the submersible glided over a deep trench, Maris noticed something strange on her scanner. A small cluster of objects floated unnaturally far below where any debris should be. They were not alive in the usual sense, nor were they entirely still. Curious, Maris adjusted her controls and slowly descended. The objects came into view, a line of old sailboats. Their wooden hulls weathered and cracked, but somehow preserved against time. The boats were small, simple, and elegant, like relics from a long-forgotten era. Some were sunken partially, resting against the rocky seabed, while others floated just above it, as if suspended by invisible threads. Maris's eyes widened in amazement. She had read about old sailboats in history books, but she had never seen one like this, especially not in such numbers and in such a strange formation. She carefully maneuvered the submersible closer. As she approached, the boats began to shimmer faintly, soft glow that pulsed gently like the heartbeat of the ocean itself. Maris's heart raced. She activated her recording instruments and took samples of the water near the boats. But nothing seemed unusual chemically. It was ordinary seawater. Yet the glow persisted, growing brighter when her submersible came closer. Then, the most incredible thing happened. The sailboats began to move. Slowly, at first, as though awakening from a long slumber, their hulls shifted and turned as if guided by invisible hands. Impossible. Maris whispered to herself. They're moving. But how? The boats formed a loose line and glided silently through the water. Maris followed them cautiously, keeping her distance. She felt a strange sense of familiarity, a connection she could not explain. The movements of the boats seemed purposeful, as though each carried a memory, a story, a spirit. Suddenly, vision flashed before Maris's eyes, not through the submersible's screens, but in her mind. She saw a storm, waves taller than buildings, winds that screamed like wild animals. She felt the fear and determination of a sailor, hands gripping a wet rope, eyes scanning the horizon for a safe passage. A voice calm and firm whispered in her thoughts, "Do not fear. Courage guides the way." Maris blinked and looked around. The submersible was still humming steadily, the instruments reading normal levels. Yet she knew without a doubt that the boats were not ordinary objects. They were alive, not in the way humans or animals were alive, but in a deeper, older way. They carried the courage, the spirit, and the determination of those who had once sailed them. For hours, Maris followed the boats as they led her over underwater mountains and through narrow trenches. Each time she passed, she felt stronger, braver, as if the sailor's spirits were lending her courage. She began to take notes in her journal, describing the boats, their patterns, and the strange glow they emitted. She sketched the lines and curves, wondering if she would ever understand the force keeping them preserved and moving. As night fell, Maris returned to her submersible's small habitat on the surface. The ocean above was calm, reflecting the last rays of the setting sun. She could still feel the echo of the sailor's spirits in her mind, a quiet hum of bravery and resilience. She wrote in her log, "The boats are not abandoned. They are waiting, watching, and guiding. Humanity's spirit endures in ways I cannot yet comprehend." Meanwhile, high above in orbit, alien observers watched Earth with keen interest. They were researchers from a distant star system, studying human civilization. Many had considered humans primitive compared to their own species, but these old sailboats puzzled them. How could fragile wooden vessels, abandoned and long decayed, radiate an energy that was neither technological nor biological, but intentional? The aliens' instruments showed patterns, subtle signals of guidance and protection that defied logical explanation. One of their leaders, a scholar named Zillow, noted, "This is not technology. This is spirit. The humans left something in their creations that endures even after death." Back on the surface, Maris prepared for her next dive. She knew she could not ignore the call of the sailboats. They were more than history. They were a bridge to understanding humanity itself. Her mission shifted from simple exploration to something greater, deciphering the message. Carried by these living relics, the next morning she returned to the trench. As she descended, the glow of the sailboats greeted her like old friends. This time, she reached out with her instruments to interact more closely. One boat, a small vessel with peeling white paint, floated nearer. It stopped, hovering just a few meters away. Maris held her breath. Then, in a moment of quiet wonder, a simple truth became clear. The boats were not merely guided by memory, they responded to courage. Each decision she made, each small act of bravery or careful maneuvering, seemed to influence the boat's movement. She realized that the spirits of the sailors were not trapped. They were alive in another form. Watching for humanity's continued courage and curiosity, Maris felt a surge of pride and responsibility. These boats, these echoes of brave old mariners, were teaching her something essential. The human spirit never truly dies. It survives through memory, through courage, and through the legacy left for future generations. Hours passed like minutes as she explored with the sailboats. By the time she returned to the surface, her mind was full of wonder, her heart full of determination. She had discovered a connection to the past that was more alive than anything in the stars, colonies above, and in the quiet of the deep ocean. The sailboats rested again, glowing faintly as if whispering, "We are here. We are watching. And we are proud." For Maris Kale, the adventure was only beginning. The oceans of Earth were no longer empty. They were alive with echoes of courage, waiting for those willing to listen. The days after her first encounter with the sailboats passed quickly for Maris Kale. She could not stop thinking about the strange vessels, their glowing hulls, and the deep courage she had felt from their presence. Every night, as she recorded her observations in the small cabin of her research ship, she replayed the images in her mind, the boats moving in perfect harmony, as if guided by invisible hands, and the whispers of long-gone sailors urging her forward. By morning, she had made her decision. She would return to the trench not just to observe, but to understand. Her mission was no longer simple research. She had stumbled upon something extraordinary, a living memory of humanity, a force that had survived centuries in the form of old sailboats. And she knew she could not do it alone. Maris contacted her mentor, Dr. Elias Vorn, a historian and expert in maritime archaeology. Elias had spent his life studying humanity's oldest vessels and had always dreamed of seeing them in their natural element. When Maris explained her discovery, Elias was skeptical at first. Wooden boats moving on their own? "That's impossible," he said over the coms. "They cannot survive like that." "I saw it, Elias. I felt it. It's not just survival. There is something inside them, something alive, guiding me, teaching me." Elias paused, the sound of ocean waves faint through his comm device. "If what you say is true, then humanity has left a legacy beyond anything we imagined. Something more than technology, more than memory. Something like..." Spirit, encouraged by her mentor, Maris prepared for a longer expedition. This time, she brought more equipment: scanners, sensors, lights, and even robotic probes. She wanted to study the boats, to understand their movements, and to see if their strange glow could be explained. As she descended into the trench, the sailboats appeared almost instantly, as if waiting for her. The small vessel she had first approached hovered nearby, glowing faintly. Maris felt her heart quicken. She reached out with her submersible's robotic arm, careful not to touch the boat directly. The glow intensified, bathing the cabin in soft light. Suddenly, the boat moved closer on its own. It rotated gently, pointing toward a narrow canyon in the trench. Maris hesitated. The canyon was dangerous, with sharp rocks and unpredictable currents. But then she remembered the courage she had felt from the spirits, the sailors who had guided her before. She swallowed her fear and steered the submersible toward the canyon. The movement of the boats became more pronounced. They swirled around her, almost like a dance, guiding her safely through the treacherous canyon. Currents tried to push her off course, but the vessels adjusted, their soft glow illuminating the way. Maris realized something incredible. The boats were not just following her, they were helping her make the right choices. Keeping her safe, hours passed as she followed them through the maze of underwater cliffs. She could feel a strange connection growing between herself and the boats. Each time she hesitated or felt fear, the vessels seemed to respond, gently nudging her forward. And with each step, she felt braver, stronger, more determined. At last, the boats led her to a hidden underwater valley filled with ruins. Stone structures, carved with symbols of humanity's earliest civilizations, lay half-buried in sand and coral. Maris's sensors detected faint traces of energy around the ruins. She realized that the sailboats had been guiding her here for a reason. These ruins, they're thousands of years old, she whispered to herself. The boats, they're showing me something important. As she explored, Maris noticed that the boats arranged themselves around the edges of the ruins. One by one, they glowed brighter, forming a protective circle. She felt a warmth spreading through her mind, almost like the presence of human sailors standing beside her, encouraging her to continue. She activated her instruments and began to record everything. The symbols carved into the stone walls were unfamiliar, but somehow she felt she understood them not logically, but instinctively. They spoke of courage, exploration, and the enduring strength of humanity. Maris realized that these messages had been left not for technology, not for the stars, but for humans themselves, a reminder that bravery and determination were the true tools of survival. As Maris worked, she sensed another presence. Through her instruments, she detected energy patterns above the surface. The alien observers she had heard about in the news, studying humanity from orbit, had taken notice. They watched silently as she explored, unable to comprehend fully what they were witnessing, in the observation deck of their orbital ship. Xylo and their team studied the readings. "They are guided," Xylo said, "but not by any technology we recognize. The humans, they carry something inside them, something that survives in their creations. Their courage, their spirit, it lives on, even after centuries." Back in the ocean, Maris noticed something strange. The sailboats began to move again, slowly, forming a line that stretched from the ruins to the open water. She followed them, curious. The vessels seemed to guide her toward a natural tunnel in the rock, a passageway that opened into a wider part of the trench. Maris adjusted her submersible carefully. Inside the tunnel, the water pressure increased, and strong currents threatened to push her off course. Yet the boats moved with precision, adjusting their positions to create a safe path. It was as if the sailors themselves were holding her hand, showing her the way. When she emerged from the tunnel, Maris found herself in a vast underwater plain, dotted with strange structures and sunken ships. Here, the sailboat's glow reached its brightest, illuminating every corner. She realized this place was a sanctuary, a resting ground for vessels long abandoned by time, each carrying the spirit of its original crew. Maris's heart swelled with awe. "They've been waiting for someone to find them," she whispered, "waiting for humanity to remember its courage." As she explored the plain, the sailboats began to communicate in a way she could feel rather than see. Movements, shifts in position, changes in glow, they were all messages. One boat moved to a sunken ship, then back to her, tracing a pattern that resembled a star map. Another circled her submersible, glowing brighter each time she followed its instructions correctly. Maris understood. The boats were teaching her, guiding her, helping her learn. Each action required courage and focus. Each decision mattered. This was not just exploration, it was a lesson in human spirit. The sailboats, through centuries of waiting, were passing on the knowledge that bravery, determination, and wisdom were more powerful than any machine or technology. Days turned into nights as Maris worked, recording every detail. She felt herself growing stronger, more confident, as if the courage of the sailors was slowly becoming a part of her. And then, a moment of quiet revelation struck her. The sailboats were not just guiding hers, they were guiding all of humanity. Their lesson was clear: no matter how far humans traveled, no matter how advanced their technology became, the spirit that had allowed their ancestors to survive, explore, and thrive was still the greatest strength of all. Suddenly, alarms blared from her submersible. A storm was forming above, creating powerful currents that threatened to push her toward the rocky cliffs of the trench. The sailboats moved immediately, forming a protective barrier around her vessel. Their glow intensified, creating a shield of light and energy that guided her safely through the turbulent water as she broke through the storm and reached calmer waters. Maris felt a deep gratitude. The vessels, these echoes of brave old mariners, had protected her. She realized that the sailboats were not just memories, they were active guardians, a living reminder that human courage could shape the world around it. When she returned to her ship, exhausted but exhilarated, she began transmitting her findings to Earth and the colonies. The message was simple: humanity's strength was not only in technology or numbers, but in courage, determination, and the spirit that had guided explorers across oceans and into the stars. Maris knew the journey was far from over. The sailboats had shown her only the beginning. Somewhere in the ocean, other relics waited, other spirits lingered, and other lessons remained. She had glimpsed the living history of humanity, and she understood that the real adventure had just begun. And beneath the waves, the sailboats rested once more, their glow dimming slightly, but their presence unbroken. The spirits of the mariners were patient. They would wait, they would guide, and they would continue teaching. Humanity had begun to listen, and the echoes of bravery would never be forgotten. Maris Kale stood on the deck of her research ship, watching the calm ocean surface. Days of exploration had changed her forever. She had discovered not just sunken sailboats, but the enduring spirit of humanity itself. The vessels had taught her courage, patience, and wisdom. They were more than history. They were living memories, guiding the present. But her journey was far from over. A sudden message arrived from the distant human colony of Aurelia 7, a thriving settlement orbiting a gas giant. The colony was in danger. A massive storm in space, an unusual cosmic anomaly, threatened to destroy the orbital platforms. Humanity had advanced far into the stars, yet this disaster was beyond any technology's immediate reach. Maris's heart sank. She thought of the colonies, the people who relied on Earth's guidance, and then she remembered the sailboats. If the spirits of old mariners could guide her safely through the ocean's dangers, perhaps they could help now remind humanity of the courage and wisdom that had carried them from Earth to the stars. She immediately set out for the trench again. The sailboats sensed her urgency. They glowed brighter, moving in precise patterns, as if preparing for something larger than exploration. Maris piloted her submersible among them, feeling the same familiar reassurance. "This isn't just about me anymore," she whispered. "It's about humanity." The boats led her to the heart of the underwater plain. Here, dozens of sunken vessels rested, each echoing the spirit of mariners long gone. Maris activated her instruments to communicate with the vessels, though she did not fully understand how. She felt, rather than heard, a response, a deep, steady rhythm that seemed to pulse through the water, as if telling her that courage and focus would guide her next steps. Hours later, Maris returned to the surface with a plan. She sent instructions to the Aurelia 7 colony, explaining how to navigate the incoming storm with precision and patience. Her words were simple, but they carried the wisdom she had learned from the sailboats: careful observation, calm determination, and trust in human ability. As she transmitted the instructions, she noticed something extraordinary. Across the ocean, the sailboats began to move again, forming a massive formation. From above, it would have looked like a fleet of glowing stars moving in unison. Maris understood these were not just boats. They were a demonstration of humanity's courage and resilience. A message sent from Earth to the farthest colonies. The cosmic storm reached Aurelia 7's orbit. Satellites and observation posts detected its power, magnetic turbulence, energy surges, and dangerous debris. But the humans followed Maris's instructions, moving carefully and with patience, guided by her calm voice. And somewhere deep in the ocean, the sailboats moved in ways that somehow mirrored the actions in space. Their pulses of energy resonating with the cosmic waves, the storm raged for hours, but the human colony survived. Not a single life was lost. The crew of Aurelia 7 looked at one another in disbelief, unsure whether their success was due to skill, luck, or something else entirely. Meanwhile, Maris stood on the deck of her ship, feeling a quiet satisfaction. She knew it was the boats, the spirits of old mariners, that had guided humanity through this danger. News of the event spread quickly across Earth and the colonies. Scientists, historians, and explorers were fascinated and inspired. They spoke of courage as a force that could influence events, a force that transcended time and space. Maris published her findings, describing the sailboats, their movements, the extraordinary lessons they had taught her. And then something remarkable happened. Other human explorers began to report similar phenomena. In oceans far from Maris's trench, sailboats moved in synchrony, protecting ships, guiding submersibles, and inspiring explorers with courage. It became clear that the spirits of humanity's brave ancestors were everywhere, waiting to assist those who sought knowledge and adventure. Back on Earth, Maris returned to the trench one last time. The sailboats gathered around her submersible, glowing with a soft, steady light. She reached out and placed her hand on the small white vessel she had first met. She felt a wave of warmth and pride. "They are not just memories," she said softly. "They are guardians. They are reminders that humanity's spirit is alive, even after centuries." The boats seemed to respond, tilting gently, as if bowing in acknowledgement. Maris realized that the lesson they had given was complete. Courage, determination, and the will to explore were humanity's greatest strengths. Technology could fail, storms could rage, but the spirit that had guided sailors across oceans and explorers across space would endure forever. As she rose to the surface, she thought of the colonies, the explorers, and the future of humanity. The oceans had been silent for centuries, but now they whispered stories of courage and resilience. Humanity had not abandoned its past. It had carried it forward, a living echo in every heart willing to listen. Maris's report became a beacon of hope. Children on Earth studied the sailboats in their schools, learning about bravery not just through history books, but through living examples of courage guiding the present. Colonists on distant planets shared stories of the vessels, teaching their communities that human spirit could overcome even the greatest challenges. Years later, when Maris had grown older and the first human settlements on new worlds flourished, she returned once more to the trench. The sailboats were still there, resting quietly among the ruins. She smiled as she watched them glow softly in the fading sunlight. "They have waited patiently," she said, "and now humanity understands." The vessels did not move that day. They did not need to. Their lesson had been passed on, their purpose fulfilled. They were no longer just relics of the past, they were living symbols of courage, guiding humanity in ways beyond comprehension. As Maris sailed back to her ship, she knew one thing for certain. The legacy of human courage was not written in books or preserved in machines. It lived in the hearts of those who dared to explore, who faced fear with determination, and who believed that even the smallest spark of bravery could change the world. And somewhere deep in the ocean, the sailboats rested, their glowing forms a quiet promise humanity's spirit would endure, echoing across time and space, inspiring all who would listen. Maris looked out at the endless horizon. The ocean was calm, the sky painted with stars, and somewhere in the distance, the first signs of dawn glimmered. She knew the adventure would never truly end. Humanity would continue to explore, to create, and to face challenges with courage. And in the heart of every human who dared to dream, spirits of brave old mariners would live on.